I'm totally blind, and I have been totally blind since I was 6 years old.
Kyle Coon is on the U.S. Triathlon Paralympic team.
Being totally blind is scary.
So one day, blind Kyle decided to go back home and say, hey, I want to start rock climbing. What was that about?
I think it is really easy to have a victim mentality. I definitely feel fear rejection. Like we need to help the poor blind kid again. Or
For me, and I think for a lot of people, asking for help is extremely hard.
we're only human. We can't do it all. And so asking for help allows us to do more.
Kyle, what's your most trained sense?
My most trained sense? Hey, Kyle, just because you're blind doesn't mean you can't do anything. Can't do anything.
Welcome to One at a Time. Today we'll meet Kyle Coon, an extraordinary individual who, despite having lost his sight at a very young age, has conquered rock climbing, became a world-class triathlete, and more, defying all odds. Kyle breaks barriers in sports and advocates for the blind community with a story of courage and persistence. During our first conversation, he said something that stuck with me. I do partnerships for a living. I can't survive without other people. It made me actually realize how much this applies to all of us. He was just much more aware of it. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. And just before we jump into the episode, I want to ask you just one big favor. If you can just hit subscribe down there, it's going to help us tremendously to keep going. Thank you. All right, Kyle. So thank you for being here. I'd like to start with a bit of a blank slate and really ask you who's Kyle Coon, and what would you like our listeners to know about you, even people who might not know you.
Oh wow! Yeah, wide open. You definitely like the blank slate. Well, gather around the fire, everybody. It's story time. My name's Kyle Coon. I currently live and train out of the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. I am a professional paratriathlete. I've been racing triathlon in some form or fashion since 2015, and been doing it at the World Triathlon and Paralympic level since 2018. So that's in a very small nutshell, the immediate the immediate Kyle Coon. But what makes me more unique is that I am totally blind, and I have been totally blind since I was 6 years old. So it's been quite the journey and quite the ride throughout my life to making it to the going to the Paralympic Games, and now gearing up for a second Paralympic Games appearance, hopefully in Paris. So it's been quite the ride and quite the journey.
Who's your biggest cheerleader?
My biggest cheerleader. Oh man, there's so many. I mean, like, look, my family has, family has been such a huge, important part of my life. So I would definitely have to say my immediate family, which includes both of my parents, all three of my sisters, my girlfriend. Just so many people. I don't think I can. If I started listing them all, we'd be here for more than 2 or 3 hours, because I would just be listing off more and more people. So
be a full-on list.
I just have such a supportive, amazing community around me, and I'm always looking to expand that community, and I think that's one of the really great things about sport and my life in particular is that my life I really cherish relationships, and I cherish building those relationships and those partnerships with people, whether they be my blood relatives or whether they become part of my family through just spending time with each other.
Mm-hmm. Before we go into something that you just mentioned that I would like to touch a little bit later,
Yeah.
Let's go back to the cheerleader. I'd love to sort of put a name to your mother. Who, who,
uh,
who who's that?
yeah. So my mom is Anne Marie Coon. She is quite the lady. Um,
Amazing.
yeah, she you know to to raise four kids, one of them having one of them being a cancer survivor. Myself, I lost my sight because of cancer as a child, and then the fact that she's just been able to corral all four of us kids, keep my keep my dad in line as he's gone on to build and run some pretty successful businesses. But she has really been the bedrock of our family unit, and we always we joke. My family is very business minded, very business oriented. We all joke that while Dad may be the CEO, Mom is definitely head of operations there. So she's the one that makes the world the world go round in the Coon family function. That's for sure.
So if we would ask the chief operations officer, what did Kyle left out of his introduction of himself, what would she say?
Oh man. Well, she would probably spend about 90 minutes telling you, everything from the time that from the time that my family decided to I decided that I wanted to get into rock climbing. So the whole family was get decided to start rock climbing, to all the different skiing adventures, the family camping trips and everything. Oh man, there's again there's so much that that each one of my family members would mention, and I think that's kind of the cool thing, is that there's uh, so many stories and so many perspectives, and we've gotten to live such a fun life as a family. But I think one of the top things my mom would mention is that I'm a tough, stubborn son of a gun. I'm headstrong. I'm very bulldog like. Once I get my teeth into something, I like to hang on and try it and shake it until until I pry it open or pry it loose. And you know I I definitely like to bulldog my way through life. So I definitely think that's something that she would say.
So one day, blind Kyle decided to go back home and say, "Hey, I want to start rock climbing."
Yeah,
What was that about?
so it kind of sort of happened like that. So back when I was, I lost my left eye when I was 5 and my right eye when I was 6. And look, I think people out there can imagine that, as a 6-year old, going from being able to, I wasn't able to see great, but I was able to see a little bit, and going from being able to see to not being able to see anything at all was super, super scary.
Hmm.
And it ultimately just made me sad and depressed, and didn't really want to get out there and do anything. And I was very, very fortunate that my family, my parents were involved in Rotary International, and my dad met someone through the Rotary, through his Rotary club, that mentioned to him that she had heard this man speak about his totally blind son, who was a rock climber, skydiver, tandem cyclist, marathon runner, all mountain climber, all just this crazy adventure athlete. And and that guy happened to live about a 45-minute drive from where we were. So my dad invited him to come give the same talk to his Rotary Club, and so this gentleman, Ed Weinmeyer, rolled in and just started talking to my dad's Rotary Club about his blind son Eric. And my dad brought me and my mom and my sisters to that talk, and we met up with Ed afterwards. And Ed was Ed had this deep baritone of a voice, and was very commanding. He was a Marine Corps fighter pilot in Vietnam, and so just had this presence about him, and like he basically said like, hey, I'm gonna get Eric down here. I'll arrange to have him do some speaking engagements, and you're gonna meet him, and before you know it, you're gonna be doing pretty much exactly what Eric's doing. So he arranged for Eric to come down to where we were living at the time, Jacksonville, Florida, and I got to meet basically the first adult blind person that I had ever met before, and it happened to be this guy that was a crazy adventure athlete, and and even though I was only 7 or 8 years old at the time, Eric was in his early 30s, and he became very much a mentor to me, and basically gave me this verbal slap upside the head and said, hey Kyle, just because you're blind doesn't mean you can't do anything. Yeah, you could like, I know you love basketball, I know you love rollerblading, you love riding your bike, you can still do all that stuff, but you can also there's also a whole world out there that is open to you still. You just got to be willing to do things a little differently and take some risks. And so he challenged me to go try rock climbing, and we had some family friends that were members of the rock climbing gym, and so they took me, and we figured out how a blind dude climbs up a rock wall, and then my whole family got into it. My sisters and I joined the competitive climbing team, and we were very, very involved in that sport for quite a while, and that spun off into taking family hiking and camping trips, and we all very much got into outdoor rock climbing, climbing on real rock, and then that spun off into wanting to go out west to Colorado, to experience big mountains and to experience skiing, and eventually we all just my entire family fell in love with the mountains out here in Colorado, and we all kind of gradually migrated our way out west, and have all kind of settled in the in Colorado, and it's been a blast. It's been a life full of adventure.
That's really crazy. And I guess what a gift that you managed to meet him, and not maybe someone who would have felt a bit more of a victim of circumstances. Rather he seems like an inspiration of hope, and in a way, an enabler that any of us could potentially want to meet, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's hard because I think it is really easy to have a victim mentality. I think it is really easy. And in order to not have that victim mentality, you have to be willing to embrace the challenges, and be willing to fail a little bit, and you have to be willing to take some risks. And to be fair, like Eric isn't this Eric isn't some blind Evel Knievel daredevil type person. He does take very calculated risks, but he's but like I said before, he's definitely been he's been a mentor. Now I count him as a very, very good friend. And yeah, he was definitely he definitely shed some hope that that life could not just be survivable, but you could thrive as a blind person, and as a and it's a lot easier to like it's a lot easier to inspire and shape and mold a 7 or 8 year old's mind into adopting that mindset of not becoming a victim, and just being willing to embrace that change, than it is to it can be challenging, when we're in our 20s, 30s, 40s to we get set in our ways, but if we can be willing to open ourselves up and embrace change and adaptability, we can be inspired to make changes and get ourselves moving and doing different things, no matter how old or young we are. So I look at inspiration as this inspiration. I think just it really, at the end of the day, it makes you think, and it makes you think differently. So like as that 7-year-old newly blind kid, I was looking at this world of darkness, thinking, oh man, like how am I going to I wasn't thinking, how am I gonna have a family, how am I going to get a job, do work for a living, make money, any of that. I was just thinking, like, how am I going to play outside with my friends? How am I going to, go to my friends' birthday parties? How am I going to, have friends? All that kind of stuff. And, Eric stepped in at a very critical time, and he made me just think a little differently. It wasn't, it really was this, okay, like these are your circumstances. Yeah. How can you do that? You just have to think a little differently. It's possible it's possible for, a kid who is, totally blind to, still be outside and rollerblade with his friends, or, ride a bike, or, climb up a wall, or join Boy Scouts, or anything along those lines. It's possible. You just have to be willing to think a little differently, and learn how to apply the skills that you're learning as you're growing up. So I think inspiration just makes us think a little differently, and then motivation is kind of it's the action. It's motivation is essentially just a reason to move. So if our reason to move or do something is strong enough, we're gonna take action. And I like I said before, I come from a family that is very business minded, but we're at the end of the day, I come from a very high achieving minded family, and I was not the type of kid that wanted to sit on the sidelines. And like I wanted to I'm a competitive guy. I wanted to be out there doing stuff. I wanted to be going toe to toe with my friends, and pushing myself in sport, in school, and all of the things. And so I really didn't have a choice in that.
Yeah.
If I wanted to be a productive member of society, and if I wanted to live my best life, I had to get off my butt, get off the sidelines, and and think differently, think bigger, and be willing to push myself, and to be willing to fail.
When I listen to you, it really becomes, it's almost evident that you've become Eric in a way. You are now that inspiration for others in a way. But you also touched on some very human elements, right? That like those questions that you were asking yourself even when you were a kid. Are there still questions that today still come and sort of haunt you?
I mean, look, just because I have this mindset of, this growth mindset, I guess is the popular term these days. That doesn't mean it's not scary. That doesn't mean I don't have doubts. Look, I graduated from college in 2013. I was a high achiever. I got my bachelor's degree in under in under 4 years. I did it in 3 years, and I charged out into the world, thinking I was the hottest thing since sliced bread. And I basically said, I'm going to apply for every job CEO and above. I mean, because at that time, I grew up in the age of the young entrepreneur who didn't finish school, who started tech companies and all that. So like that was a super popular thing from 2005 to 2015. And so I fell into this classic millennial trap of I am the greatest thing in the world. So you should just bow down before me and recognize my greatness. And I started applying for all these jobs that I was definitely not qualified for. And, and after a few dozen applications, not hearing back, I started kind of climbing my way down the corporate ladder. And eventually, I was applying for grocery store bag boy jobs. And, I look up and a year had gone by and I was unemployed. So I was a college graduate. I was not employed. I had just recently gotten turned down to be a grocery store bag boy. And, that was hard. It was very humbling, and I wasn't sure, and all these doubts crept in. I had to ask myself: was it because of my blindness? Was it because of my arrogant attitude? Was it because of something else entirely? And I was again very fortunate and lucky to get connected with someone who saw a little potential in me and offered me a job working in a call center environment. And so I spent a year and a half working for that organization, and was eventually hired away from them, and pursued some other lines of work before going down the road of I was at the same time I was beginning to improve in triathlon, and I was thinking maybe I would have a good shot at doing well in the sporting space, but yeah, so I went off on a long tangent there, but to kind of get back to the original question, there are still being totally blind is scary, and it does come with its challenges. I want to say only about 1% of the internet is considered fully accessible to screen reading softwares and all that. So there's a lot of stuff that I gotta I do workarounds and all that, and I when my sporting career does come to an end, there's I have to I have to learn to apply the skills that I've learned over the years. But I think I'm in a much better mental headspace to know how to apply those skills now than I was back when I was a 21-year-old new college graduate.
Sure.
So yeah.
What do you think it's the one thing that most people would, it would be great that most people would understand about what it is being blind? The one thing that you're almost always thinking, I wish these people actually got it.
Oh man, if I had to pick one thing, because there's so many.
Maybe I give you three.
yeah, but I'm zeroing in on I think one of the biggest things is I have to plan my life almost down to the minute sometimes. um, because because it's not like I can, you know, pull up a map and, if I'm going to a new city or, somewhere that I have never been before. It's not like I can just pull up a map and get you know, a quick overview and see kind of how streets and stuff are laid out. I have to go and experience it for the first time. Or, if, it's not like I can, you know, it's like, oh, um, I need to go replenish my shampoo and body wash. I'll just go jump in my car and drive over to Walgreens and pick up a couple of things. I have to plan and think ahead. And in my line of work right now, as a professional triathlete, um, some of the biggest areas, I need to be able to execute my workouts, do all of the training, and so if I so I have to weigh the pros and cons very much of, okay, if I go, to, you know if I have this opportunity to, speak to a company or an organization, as a as a motivational or inspirational speaker, um, you know do I have the like like do I have the facilities there that I can, can I get access, can I get quick and easy access to a pool? Can I,
Hmm.
is there easy quick access to a treadmill or a stationary bike? Or am I better off not taking that particular speaking engagement, and focusing in and locking in on my training here in Colorado Springs? So I think time management is such a big thing for me. Because, and like I mentioned earlier, um, accessibility, being able to navigate, something. It's not just, I point the mouse at something and click on a button. Um, it's there's a lot of there's a lot of keystrokes and stuff, and some web applications work well with one screen reader uh, on a on a Apple platform. Some applications work better on a Windows
Yeah.
platform with another screen reader, and so I actually have like I have two computers and three and four different screen reading softwares, so that I could, you know so that I could potentially operate, and get stuff done, and that might take and it might take a little bit longer. So I generally, I have to be very, very efficient, with my time, and very strategic in the decisions that I make. I have to keep an eye on, like I said, like I have to keep an eye on simple, silly things
Hmm.
like, oh, I'm running low on body wash. I need to either arrange with someone that I can, go and get. I can go and pick some up at the store, or I need to jump on Instacart and, make sure that I get, make sure I get it shipped, on this day, and I need to make sure that I'm, here at this hour during that time window, or I need to just, jump on Amazon and schedule it to arrive at a certain day and time. I think that is probably, the
For
you
the
know
number one.
I would say that's the number one. Because it can take a while. I'm while I pride myself on being independent and, efficient and all that. I'm it's still it's still, when you can't see where you're going, what you're doing, it could take a few extra minutes or a few extra hours to accomplish some tasks, and it makes nimbleness a little bit trickier.
For
So
sure.
I would say that's
You
probably the biggest thing.
you touched on something which I think it's probably from a different angle, a superpower, which
Hmm.
is you've talked about the power of partnerships and how, in a
Hmm.
way, I think in a prior conversation we both had, you sort of explained this as I do partnerships for a living. Every single day, I have people that can help me, and my life almost
Hmm.
depends on it.
Yep.
What does that mean to you, and how did you get to that point?
Yeah. You know, I do. I do partnerships for a living. You know, like I said, I do pride myself on being independent. I do everything I possibly can, um, you know, to be self sufficient. Um, but you know, our world at this point is not built for someone who is totally blind to, you know, live this absolutely purely independent life. Um, and at the end of the day, we're all human, and connections, and you know, connecting with people and having experiences with people, that's what makes us human, and that's what makes us, you know, so different from any other, you know, any other species. Is that we have these human connections, and we adapt, and you know, we build these relationships, and these partnerships. Um, you know, so yeah, I like technology these days has been such a, you know, such a game changer. You know, like, you know, here we are in two different countries, you know, doing a podcast. You know, and you know, like we would not have been able to do this, you know,
Sure.
30, you know, 20, 30 years ago.
I think what really,
But
yeah,
yeah.
sorry to jump in. I think
Yeah.
what's really sort of for me very impressive is that I believe I'm not the only one when talking about this, but
Hmm.
for me, and I think for a lot of people, asking for help is extremely hard.
Oh, it is.
I was reading a book a few months ago called The Art of Asking by an author called Amanda Palmer.
Hmm.
And it was literally just sort of, how do we like would go lens before we even ask for help? And I think a lot of
Yep.
it also comes from this sense of, what if they say no, right?
Yeah.
What if I fear rejection?
Yep.
And so, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what your process has been, and potentially what is it that you could sort of share with most of us that are even scared of asking for help, what it is to ask it every single day, and what you've learned that could make it potentially easier.
Yeah. I mean, you know, here's the you know, here's the thing. I definitely feel fear rejection. You know, I definitely there's definitely a, you know, this fear within me that, um, you know, that if I ask for help with something, do I appear incompetent? And you know, one of, you know, and you know, it's one of those, you know, societal pressures that, you know, you know, like we need to help the poor blind kid again, or the, you know, the poor blind man again. It's like, nah, I don't want to appear that way. And so there is this fear, inside of me of appearing that way. But on the other hand, if I don't ask for help with something that I legitimately cannot accomplish on my own, well, then it's not going to get done. Well, then it's definitely not going to get done. And I may not get all of the information that I need to make a phenomenal decision. Uh, so I have always had to, you know, be willing to, you know, say, okay, like what do I legitimately need help with, and what can I legitimately do on my own, and can I find a way to do something on my own? And if I can't, just be the idiot in the room and ask for help. Like, I think it was Simon Sinek that, he tells, stories about, he's sitting in a room with business executives, and, someone's, using all this big complicated jargon language, and, he puts his hand up and says, all right, I'm going to be the idiot in the room. I don't understand. Please explain. And I think, I've started to embrace that more and more, especially as my time becomes more valuable, as more stuff gets piled onto my plate. Um, when you're juggling, trying to, I have to cram in a swim, a bike, a run workout, sometimes a strength workout. And then, jump on, I do a lot of these podcast interviews. I run my own podcast. I travel to do speaking engagements, all this stuff. And so the more stuff that we all get onto our plates, we can't, we're only human. We can't do it all. And so asking for help allows us to do more, and allows us to extend our reach and help other people at the end of the day. And it allows us to build those genuine connections. So while it's still challenging to sometimes ask for help or ask for assistance, and there is sometimes still this fear of, being the idiot in the room or appearing incompetent, I think not asking for help is more selfish. I think not asking for help is more ignorant and makes us actually be the idiot in the room, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. But it's interesting because we all sort of, regardless of whether, we're blind or not or whatever it is, we sort of both, on both sides come from the same, space of maybe I'm the idiot, right? Like,
Yeah.
should I ask for help? Is this going to show that I'm not capable? Is this going to, in a way, sometimes we get caught up in this sort of imposter syndrome of like, will
Yep.
they now realize that I actually don't know,
Yep.
or that I cannot do this?
Yep.
So it's kind of interesting that we're sort of, regardless of where we're coming from, we all have the same sort of starting point.
Yeah. Yeah. We all have this fear of rejection. We all look, at the end of the day, we all want to be accepted by one another. And it's just finding the right, going back to this partnership idea. It's just finding the right partnerships, surrounding yourself with the right people that support you and that challenge you and that understand you, that the team that I have around me almost every day is, we all push and challenge each other, and we all recognize that, look, if someone is asking for help, it's, for a legitimate reason, and they legitimately want to learn and want to grow, because those are the types of people that I like to surround myself with, is people that like to learn and grow and challenge themselves, because that's the way that I want to be. And we are a reflection of, the 5 or 10 people that are closest to us.
Kyle, what's your most trained sense?
My most trained sense? Oh man. I don't know. I think, like in terms of like smell, touch, taste, and hearing, all that.
Because I think for the most of us, we live in a very visual world, right?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that, in your corner, there's probably a completely, you were just talking about sort of, learning and growing. And one of the things that I consider myself most fascinating about what you potentially experience is a whole world of new senses and new experiences, right? Like even the fact that now we're talking, if you probably would have to describe me, you would probably do it in a very different way that someone, else from a different point of view would do.
Right.
So I'm wondering, what are things that, for you sort of drive, I don't know, even beauty, right? Like in what terms do you explore it or you sense it most?
Yeah. So it's a really good question. so there's this common, I would say it's a common misperception of people that are blind or visually impaired, and in that, like, when you lose your sight or all of your senses get enhanced. Newsflash, I don't have superhuman smelling capability. I can't, take a sip of wine and
You're
tell
not a good
you,
sommelier.
no, I am not a good I am not a good sommelier. Like, I can't tell you, that I smell oak and hints of cherry and walnut. Nope, can't do that. But what does happen is that because because we do live in such a visual world, I have to rely on my other four senses, my smell, my taste, my hearing, my touch, to create this visual representation of the world. And so I really have to zero in and pay attention to those other senses. So listening to how, sound bounces off of buildings and trees and people and objects, and that how that maps a visual picture in my mind. Where paying attention to the smells of of where I am, like walking, smell the walking down the street, get that whiff, that wonderful whiff of coffee in the morning, or or something, like I know I'm passing by my favorite cafe, or something along those lines. So I pay attention to my other senses a lot more, and when it comes to things like beauty and that kind of stuff, I do put a heavy emphasis on on the sounds of things. Like, I love being in the mountains. Like, the mountains to me are so beautiful because here in Colorado, if I'm out in the mountains doing climbing a 14er, or doing a trail run or something, just this wide open space is, it sounds so clean and real, and like you breathe in this beautiful fresh air, and you can hear the wind sweeping over the through the mountains, through the trees. You can hear this great sound of openness and wildness. It's really amazing. And then all that, it permeates into you, and like, you don't need to be and then if I'm climbing a mountain or doing a trail run or something with someone, and they stop to describe the scenery, it just enhances it, and then it helps to fill in those gaps and paint that visual image in my mind. So yeah, like, it's so I try to, I don't think that I rely on any one sense over the other. It's having all of these senses and bringing them all together to create one cohesive whole. And then have, and that helps me paint a visual picture in my mind. And then if someone, if I'm with someone, and they can then fill in even more details, by describing what they're seeing. So yeah, that's kind of how it works for me.
What I find it fascinating is that you're still, sort of in a way building up a visual situation, right? Like, you're still sort of,
Yeah.
as you say, you're building it up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you dream?
I do. I very rarely remember my dreams. That is one part of my memory that just does not, like, I have to do so much stuff from memory in my everyday life. I think that remembering
it's all
remembering
used up.
dream, yeah, it's all used up by the time So, but yes, I do dream it, and from what I remember of my dreams, I do dream. I can see in my dreams, at least the ones that I remember. And like, and like I wasn't born totally blind, so
Sure, sure. You
so I had 6 years of usable sight
references, I guess, right?
references. So and so I do rely pretty heavily on those first 6 years of my life being able to see, and like I said, and like you said, like we do live in a visual world. We live in a world built for people that can see, and it's okay to speak that. It's okay to speak that same language. So, I'm perfectly comfortable, building up those images in my mind, because those are the people that I'm. If I was only to interact with people who are totally blind, my world would be very small.
Sure.
And the world is a big place. There's 8 billion people on this planet, and I want to meet as many as I can, and learn it from as many of them as I can. So and in order to do that, I got to be willing to listen and share and speak my language, speak their language, and like we said, this visual world, that's a big component of of everyday life,
Of everything.
so
Guide us a little bit about, through, you're now doing paratriathlon, which means, what are you're tied to someone the whole 3 sports, or how does this work?
oh man, yeah. So as a totally blind triathlete, I when we so for those people that may not know, triathlon is swim, bike, run. So at the Paralympic level, we do sprint triathlon. So it's a 750-meter swim, a 20-kilometer bike, and a 5-kilometer run. And our swims are in open water.
Wow.
So you can't just it's bad. I think it's bad planning just to throw a totally blind person out into the middle of the ocean and say, swim 750 meters. I might be going in circles for a while. And the imagination gets to cooking up images of sharks and crocodiles and alligators,
Everything
and
coming for you.
everything coming for you. So but no, so I race with someone who can see, and we are in the swim. We are tethered at the upper thigh with a bungee cord, and the bungee cord is about say 70 to 80 centimeters long, and and my guide and I swim side by side, and when we come to a turn buoy, my guide will tap my left shoulder to let me know to turn left, tap my right shoulder to let me know to turn right, and we look at the course map and all that prior, and my guide will draw out the explain to me how the course is laid out. So and we'll we usually try to measure the the distances between and to each buoys, so that I know roughly, I can get a gauge of roughly how far it is to each turn, and then my guide is there to basically keep me swimming straight, and to keep me on course, so that we don't swim, instead of swimming 750 meters, we don't swim 1,500 meters or something along those lines. And then so we come out of the swim, and I have a custom built tandem bike, that it's specifically built for my guide and myself. It's for racing, and my guide rides in the front, I ride in the back, we both pedal. My guide does all the steering and the shifting, and and again, prior to the race, we go over the course. My guide will draw out, will take my finger and draw the course map on a tabletop, or and we talk through each turn so that I again have this visual image and this visual picture so that I can anticipate when we're going to be turning and when to apply power and all of this different kind of, all these different little nuances that happen on the bike leg of a triathlon. And at the same time, my guide is also yelling out to me, when we're coming into a hard turn, or if he has a chance, he can look down and look at the computer and let me know what my power and what my cadence is, or what my heart rate is, so that I can stay in my specific targeted race zones and all of that. And then we come off the bike and we get to the run, and there's a couple of different ways that you can execute the run. My guide and I we use a waist tether. So it's a race belt that's around my waist, a race belt around my guide's waist, and then there's this little 50 centimeter basically string or nylon strap that connects the two race belts, and we run side by side, and my guide gives me directions, turn left, turn right, step up, step down, coming into a U-turn, passing someone on the left, passing someone on the right. And so, and then he's also, looking down, checking our paces, because, we go into races with ideas of what time splits we're going to have to hit in, each kilometer or each mile to be able to execute the race to our best ability. So he's constantly keeping his head on a swivel, making sure that I'm running the tangents, making sure that I'm not running into objects or people, and keeping me safe, but also making sure that we're running as fast as we possibly can. So I run a 5K off the bike in 17 minutes and 45 seconds or so.
Wow.
So my guide has to be able to run that and basically sing a song, if you will. So he's running. So my guide has to be able to, his endurance, conversational pace has to be my race pace, which is like 3:35 or per kilometer, or for those people that don't operate in kilometers, it's like 5:40, 5:44, 5:45 per mile.
No, it's crazy to be able to be able to still be talking about that pace. It's something.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
I guess what sort of really comes as a big shock is the how short the cord is. You have to be extremely coordinated, I guess.
Oh yeah. I think the biggest part of being a visually impaired or totally blind triathlete is the communication with your guide. Like you have to practice together. You have to do some training together. And the more comfortable you are with each other, the more comfortable you are, bumping elbows or bouncing off of each other, the more efficient you will become, and the less often those things will happen. So I've been racing with, for gearing up for the 2020 Paralympic Games, I was training and racing with Andy Potts, and so we trained to get we trained together 3, 4, 5 times a week. So like we really honed our communication, and our ability to execute our racing efficiently. And I've been racing with my current race guide, Zach Goodman. He and I have been racing together. We've been racing together now since like 2018. So like we've developed really good communication, but we're still, like, it's still a work in progress, and we're still trying to find these tiny little gains, because it's like if we can communicate just a little clearer, a little crisper, then we can execute the race, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 seconds faster, and and being comfortable, running with each other, biking with each other, swimming with each other. Yeah, like it's like you said, like these, tethers are, they do sound short, like 50 centimeters. It sounds really short, but when you actually get out there, it's actually pretty long. Like you realize, like, oh wow, I have some room. I can actually swing my arms. I don't have to run like I don't have to run like a tin man, which did happen, which can tend to happen when you're running with with a guide that you're not super comfortable with. You tend to run a little, at least I tend to run a little stiff in my upper body. But the more comfortable I get with my guide, the better communication we get, and the better partnership that we have. We're able to find a flow, and my guide is able to direct me, and we joke that the ultimate test of our guide athlete partnership or relationship would be, could we do an entire race completely untethered just by doing verbal communication cues. It technically wouldn't be allowed in world triathlon racing, but it's something that we strive for. So
Absolutely. So a few questions before we close it up. What are you most grateful for in life so far?
I most grateful for there. You got a few more hours. I honestly think most grateful. I think just the people that I have surrounded myself with, the people that come into my life and that have made an impact on me. People, like my family. My family gave me the tools, and they were willing to, push and challenge me not to sit on the sidelines. People like Eric Weinmeier, who, was willing to offer a few words of inspiration and encouragement to, a young blind kid. People, like my girlfriend, who calls me out on my bullshit, my bluster and all that. People like my coach and my teammates, my God, all the people that have, swam, biked, and ran with me over the years. Just, I think I'm most grateful for the connections in life that I've made, and it all, like we were talking about earlier. It's those connections and those experiences with people that really allow us to live life to our fullest. And so I think, my, getting to travel to, I've gotten to travel to some pretty amazing and cool places, but, they wouldn't be the experiences they were if I hadn't done it with the people that I was with. So I think the people in my life, the genuine connections, is what I'm most grateful for.
And what's a dream that you still have?
Oh man, a dream that I have. It's right now. I would say my goal right now is to medal at the 2024 Paralympic Games. Missed out on a podium by only 40 seconds in Tokyo. So a definite goal of mine is to stand on the podium in Paris on September 2nd. But as far as a dream goes, I definitely, I want to get to a point in the world where we we all, everyone in this world can, look at someone with a disability, someone who is different, whether that be, skin color or, disability or different language or anything. And, we, we don't have judgment, and we accept them and all of that. So that is I think getting to that point is a big, lofty dream. It's a dream that we've all been having for decades and decades, and I think we're continuing to work toward it, and we're breaking down a lot of barriers as society, and I just want to keep seeing. I want to be part of making that dream come true. For me, it's I want to see right now roughly about 70% of people who are blind or visually impaired struggle finding employment. So one of my big goals and dreams is to help bring that number down to under 10%. So yeah, there's so many dreams and aspirations and goals out there, but just helping people have that genuine connection with anyone and everyone is out there for me as well.
I mean, the whole goal here is to interview you and not really myself sort of bring up my own perspective on things, but I try to defeat prejudice with curiosity, right? Wherever
Yes.
we have something, just be able to ask questions. That's why even at the beginning of our conversation, I said, Kyle, I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to be the stupid,
Yep.
ignorant
Absolutely.
idiot in the room asking questions of like, what is it to be blind? Because I don't know, right? Is there anything else that you think could help each and every one of us on a daily basis to sort of bring that level of connection higher, I guess, because ultimately I think prejudice is also the lack of connection, right? So, what do we do to compensate that? Maybe on the positive side of saying, how can we, connect better?
Yeah, it's a really good point, and it's something that I myself am, like you, I'm working on myself, is coming to, looking at the world through a lens of curiosity. And I think so often, like we talked about earlier, we have this fear of being incompetent or not being knowledgeable. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to come to a conversation from a standpoint of curiosity. Curiosity is the fuel for great conversation. Like we've been talking for, we've been building a genuine connection for, several weeks and, months now. And like, it's just through a genuine curiosity of each other. It's connection. We don't know what we don't know. And then I think another, so having curiosity, and asking questions that, are curious. And then I would say the next ingredient would be to learn empathy, and to practice empathy. So, and empathy at the end of the day is, caring what the people that you care about, or put more simply, like, can you put yourself in someone's shoes for a second, a minute, or a day, and try to open your mind to understand it from their perspective. And then I think the third ingredient would be just having the courage to do those things, having the courage to ask questions from a place of genuine curiosity, and having the courage to look at the world through that empathetic lens. So curiosity, empathy, and courage, I think, are three things that I think we can all, strive for, and those will help. That will definitely help us build more connection.
And I almost, when I hear you say it, it almost sounds like a virtuous circle of curiosity, empathy, courage, and then the
Yep.
courage to be curious again, and then be
Yep.
empathetic and be
Yep.
courageous,
Yep.
and just keeps on going.
It does. It's some people call it some people call it a triangle. Some people call it a circle.
Yeah,
You can call it the you know what comes first, the phoenix or the flame.
exactly.
It's you know it, life is remarkably simple. If we come at it from a point of curiosity, empathy, and courage, then we're going to build really amazing, genuine connections, and we're going to open our horizons, and our world is going to expand quicker than we ever could have imagined. And like we said before, the world's a big, fun, and exciting place. There's a lot to explore out there. So let's do it all together, because it's a lot more fun doing it together.
So two last questions, Carl. The
Yeah.
first one is this podcast is called One at a Time.
Okay.
So when I say one at a time, what would that mean to you? What does that mean to you?
I think one at a time. There's several different ways that I could interpret that. We could build. Our the theme that we've been going off of today is connections and partnerships. You could build one genuine connection or partnership at a time, through one conversation at a time, or if we take it from a sporting perspective, it's really, really hard to improve at something if for example, we're working on my swim stroke and my swim mechanics. It's really hard to know what's working and what's not if your coach is throwing, all right, I want you to do this with your hips, this with your hands, this with your elbows, this with your head, this with your breathing. You have to focus on one thing at a time. And if you focus on one thing at a time and dedicate yourself, you learn that habit much quicker. And you get really good at it, and then you can build another thing on top of that, and another thing on top of that. So I think those are it really comes down to focus. Following that one course until you're successful. Like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's all of it. So
Yeah.
those are the directions that my mind goes in.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the spirit of not only this podcast, but also on it'soneatatime.com, we actually have a newsletter where daily we have questions that in a way inspire consciousness. The whole goal is that every single day you can focus on one question that can sort of bring up a new perspective about your day.
I love it. I love it.
Can you think of one question you'd like to leave with our listeners, the people who are watching us, that could drive their consciousness maybe today?
One question. I think the question that most recently has most resonated with me has boils down to, what do I value? Like, what's important to me? And to me, connection with people, connection with myself, connection with people, and it goes back to that that triangle, or that circle of curiosity, empathy, courage. Those things are very important to me. Those are very important values. So I would say, what are your values as a person? Like, what is the thing or things that inspire you to move, to do, to get up and do what you do every day? if to borrow to borrow Simon Sinek's start with why, because when you boil down to your values, you do answer that question. It helps to start answering that question of why am I here, who am I, and why am I doing this. So like what's important in life.
Amazing. Kyle, is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't, or anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
Oh man, no, I think just Juan, this has just been I love what you're doing here. It's absolutely great. I'm so glad that we were able to connect, and we're building a pretty cool friendship and partnership. Through this podcast and through Interforce and just everything else. So just thank you for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I love doing. I've really enjoyed doing this podcast. It's been different, and you've pushed and challenged me to think a little differently, which I absolutely love. So thank you for having me on, and I can't wait to do more of this kind of stuff.
Well, thank you, Kyle. It's been an honor having you here at One at a Time. And I guess we'll continue pushing our boundaries everywhere we go.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care.